Alright, today we're going to be talking about how to get components from one object or components from one node and transfer it to another node and vice versa, and how to manage between logic and components. So let's imagine that in our game we have a certain type of logic, call it logic 1 and logic 2, and we want to use it simultaneously inside one. So what we can do is we can create an object or a component called a manager, and what we can do is we can export or expedite our logics into that manager. And once we send that in there, the manager handles the logic control and usages with it. So using the exact same recipe that we have right here, we can use the logic that we made in our last video about how to move as a chess, and what we can do is we can remove it from the update and publicize the function that has all the logic for the chess movement. And then as we have the object or the logic publicized, what we can do is we can create another component that can handle that movement logic or has it referenced, so we can use that logic inside that component. So after building or creating the component, what we can do is then we can go inside our editor and we can create that object dummy node or whatever you like, and we can add the component into our node or into our object in the world. So after adding the component or adding the logic, we have a variable that we can connect in our public node. Then we're going to do the node that we have right here, and that node will be the one that is carrying the movement or the chess movement logic that we created from beforehand. And with all that connected, we are ready to write logic into our code. So in our main getting component logic, what we can do is first we can connect, and what we can connect by is using a world ID. Now this works if you have the world ID pasted in your object, where you go back into the editor and you click on the object you want, you have the ID on the top right, and everyone has a unique ID, so you can definitely use that as an option. Now this is one way to do it, and then the other way is actually using the world name, where you have the name of the object and you can get the node by that name. Now these are two main ways you can do it, and the third way, which we have, which is our regular way, the property parameter node. Now after we have the property parameter node, what we can do is we can get the component from inside the node using the movement get component function, and then we can use the logic in our update, and this gets us to connect with the object. Now that's all done and all, but let's say we wanted to get something from inside the object. Like for example, we wanted to get the clutter interaction inside our object. How do we do that? Now for this is actually pretty easy. What we are going to be doing is actually going to create an object, Unigine object, and we're going to get the object as an item or cast it as the item we want. And then from there we can get the functions that we need from the object. In our case, we just used an object. We could use static pointer or dynamic or whatever you like, but the basic is the object. So now with all these different types, we have one more little thing. Inside the C#, what we can actually do is public the component that we need, and once it finishes building, we can actually see a parameter with that public component, and we can just drag the object that has that component and we could click on it, and now we have it connected. So you can skip on the node part if you just need a component piece, and that gives you a little bit of time save. So after all of that done and complete, we check our little ID and we check that the object has been correctly connected and everything. We can do a little test, and as we see, once we open and load, that the connections have been successfully asserted. And now we have everything connected correctly, and we can use the objects the way we want. So these are one of the ways of getting the object from the world, especially when you have many different objects at one time, or you have your logic to be delegated to a specific component. So with all that done, I will see you guys next time. I'll definitely make something more about the advanced logic, but until then, goodbye.